Welcome to the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay Dowd. My goal is to help train leaders and sales organizations how to manage and deliver results with empathy, compassion, and kindness. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. I'm really excited to introduce our guest to you today. Karl Swanepoel is an award-winning tech entrepreneur based in the UK and founder and CEO of Revolancer, an influential figure in the freelancing industry. He's also founded Rocketblast Digital, the WatchFace, and Buy Sell Jobs. Karl co-founded Leapinto and was CMO and interim CTO at Lifewill Limited. At 15, you heard that right, 15, he was the youngest ever brand ambassador for Britain's largest business conference, the Business Show. He's also been directly involved in the European Parliament's roundtable on Modernising Europe's workforce well-being strategy, which we are going to talk about. Karl, welcome to the show.
Well, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's my pleasure. So for those of us that don't know your background, could you just indulge us and share a little bit about your story?
Sure. Yeah. So, when I was 13, I decided that I wanted to be my own boss and that there wouldn't be any other way. So, ever since then, I kind of worked, towards making that happen. So all throughout school and university, I was always much more focused on starting various projects and being involved with various different businesses. To the point where now, only a couple of years after graduating, I run a company called Revolancer full time, and we've got a nice big team now. We're a freelancing platform with well over 20,000 members. So yeah, I'm very fortunate to be able to really live my dream, but it was a long time in the making.
I mean, most 13 and 15-year-olds aren't thinking about starting businesses. So I find that incredible. And I have twin teenagers that are turning 15, and they certainly aren't thinking about that. So I'm so interested in what inspired you to really want to make this move, because that's a really big undertaking at that age.
Yeah, I think it's more just I somehow, I don't know quite how, but I somehow realized that I wouldn't really be happy or fulfilled working for someone else. And then, well, I thought, there are many, that's not an easy thing to pull off. You need a lot of things to work out right for you. And there are many people who are much older than 13 who struggle kind of pulling that off. It's not an easy thing to pull off. So I decided, the best thing I can do is to start as soon as possible, gain as much experience as possible, meet as many great people as I can. And then have the best shot of pulling it off. And fortunately, I was able to right out of university.
Wow. So I hope this isn't a rude question, but how old are you now? Because you've done so much in such a short amount of time.
I'm 23 now.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And why freelancing?
Well, I guess, first I got into freelancing in the first place because it was kind of the result to Googling how to make money online when I was much younger. And then I just kind of, I see it as a great way of working. I see it as, a way of being your own boss, of kind of being the master of your own destiny. Like, yes, the risk is higher, but also I think the reward is higher. And certainly the kind of quality of life can be a lot higher. But ultimately it isn't, but it's a big part of it is up to you. You're a lot more in control. And that's what I found very appealing. And then, slowly I kind of realized, well, I can't, do everything just by myself. And I have quite large ambitions. So, I need to work with other people. So I went more into the kind of route of starting companies. But I think, freelancers and entrepreneurs have a lot in common. I think, in my opinion, freelancers are absolutely entrepreneurs. So, first I was a freelancer myself, and now I want to help other freelancers. And, ultimately, I want to help me 10 years ago and kind of create a brighter future for freelancers.
And what did you notice that was wrong with the freelancing landscape? Because I think that was a big inspiration for you starting Revolancer. So talk about that a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. So large freelancing platforms like the ones that I joined when I was 13, they still operate today the same way they did back then. And even before that, some of these platforms have been around for about 20 years, and they've always operated the exact same way, which is basically they connect you as the freelancer with a client, and then they take a commission fee on any work that you do. And that commission fee can be quite large. So, one of the largest, in fact, yeah, certainly one of the largest freelancing platforms that you might have heard of before, called Fiverr, they take 20% commission from the freelancer and 5% from the client.
Ooh.
So they're in essence taking about a quarter of every single transaction. And so that's a problem. But they're connecting you with clients. So
Sure.
you could argue, okay, they also need to make their cut, but maybe it's a bit much. But where I think the real problem lies is that in order to protect that commission fee, they actually stop you from communicating outside of the platform. So you can't exchange email addresses, you can't video call, you can't actually communicate with your client properly.
So you couldn't continue working with a client that you have on your own. You'd have to go back through the system, and then they would take more commission.
Exactly. And that's what they want. And I don't think that's fair. I think the system is broken. So that's why I started Revolancer.
And what is different about Revolancer?
Well, we don't take commission fees, and therefore we can allow people to video call and communicate freely and flexibly.
That's amazing. I love that. So when you are a CEO of a company, you naturally have to lead people. And I speak on leadership all the time, and I think that leadership needs to undergo a massive transformation. I know you work with a lot of mentors, and I'm interested in some of your perspective of what was some of your leadership lessons that you've had along the way.
Sure. I mean, ultimately, I very much believe in leading from the front. So I see it as my absolute obligation to, if I'm expecting other people to work very hard, then I better work slightly harder than them. So I think it's very important to kind of lead by example. I also think that it's a very good thing to be very kind of fair and sort of flexible with people. So, for example, if someone's having an off day, just letting them have a personal day and not kind of making a big fuss over it. I think little things like that, for the company, if someone isn't working on a day, in the grand scheme of things, it's negligible. But for that individual, is like
Big.
Being allowed to take that day out when they really need it,
Yeah.
that's a very nice gesture. And that's going to make them more loyal. It's going to make them happier. It's going to make them more satisfied with their work. So ultimately, I think, and that's just one small example, but I really believe that, if you treat people well, then you get the best out of them.
Ah, thank you, thank you, thank you. That's music to my ears. And this is what I hope most leaders understand. I'm writing a book right now, and it's on this very topic of, how do you create the culture that you want to drive results? And how important has the role of culture been to you and your companies?
Oh, very. I mean, I see my, role as the CEO and, as being two main parts. Like number one is making sure the company doesn't run out of money. And then number two is the company culture. So like kind of setting and maintaining a good company culture. So it's very important to me. We very much follow this saying of, hire slow, fire fast. And it's really paid off well. I have hired the wrong people at several points, but every single time we dealt with it very fast. And the team we have today is absolutely fantastic.
That's great. So for founders, I mean, you've started a few companies. So for founders, what is some of your advice on how they should go about securing funding? Because I know you've been successful securing large amounts of money. So what tips do you have?
Sure. So the first step, and I did this myself as well, is if you've never raised funding before, then speak to someone who has. Get advice from somebody who has, and learn from them. So I did that, and that put me in a very strong position to raise funding very quickly. And then once you have that, well, it's kind of just going out there. It's like any kind of sales. You need to go out there and build relationships. You obviously need to really have everything in line. So you need to have a very, well thought out business plan, a great pitch deck, and so on. But ultimately, it's just about going out there and having conversations with people. I mean, investors are people too. So just having very kind of human conversations with them, sharing what you're looking to achieve, and then seeing if maybe they want to be a part of it.
Yes. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I love that you hit on the word human. And I think people have misconstrued that business can't be superhuman. And, back in the days when it was manufacturing and, orderly and it was a process and there was a lot of that removed. And now we've kind of come full circle and people are really, especially after the pandemic, really they're craving humanity and vulnerability and authenticity and people that see them and recognize, like you said, I need a day, I need a moment to take care of myself or my family or my mental health. And I'm so curious about your work with the European Parliament, because having this large conversation about workforce well-being, we're seeing it all over. I mean, Deloitte has a chief well-being officer, there's chief people officers that aren't specific to HR, they're really specific to the humanity in the workforce. So can you talk about that work that you're doing with them?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's like you say, of very pivotal importance. I think even in the past when it wasn't so common, it was important but overlooked, which
Yeah.
Now I think things are moving in a much better direction. It's great to see companies, governments, just lots of people kind of taking this a lot more seriously. So yeah, no, I'm involved a little bit with the European Parliament on that. In fact, there's a panel discussion on that next week, which I'm really looking forward to. But it's been great to see. I mean, the European Parliament tends to be very kind of progressive on a lot of issues like this.
What kinds of things are they asking you?
Well, lots of different things. I mean, kind of running a freelancing platform, and so first of all, like talking to lots of freelancers on a regular basis, and then also having been through that journey myself, I've kind of got I guess a bit of a unique perspective on it. So, it's been really good to input, wherever I can and make a difference.
I think that's great. So, can you talk a little bit about the mentors that you've had and the roles that they have played for? I mean, I would imagine at 13, you haven't been to college yet. You haven't had, your business background yet. You had some real strong intuition. Were the mentors playing a role back then?
Not really back then. I mean, back then I was probably quite arrogant. I would have been too arrogant to really, make good use of a mentor. Just kind of thinking,
Yeah.
oh, I made $100 with this website. I now know everything about online business, and
Right.
no one can tell me,
Right.
anything. But no, kind of as I've grown and matured more, I realized, well, actually, no, I don't know very much at all. But I hope, nobody knows very much at all. But you can keep learning, and that's the important thing. So yeah, probably more towards when I was like 17, 18 kind of time. I started really working with different mentors. I mean, one key mentor that I've learned a huge amount from is a guy called Matt Brady, who's a co-founder of Just Eat, it's kind of like Uber Eats before Uber Eats in the UK, and they're worth billions. They're a public company in Europe now. So he's someone I've worked with. I work with a lot of different mentors on a regular basis now, and different advisors as well. Exactly because of my age, kind of, and and even if I were a lot older than I am now, I would still do the same thing.
Yeah.
But I realized that at this point, my biggest weakness is simply that I don't have decades of industry experience, because I can't have yet.
No.
But that doesn't mean that I can't work with people who have and learn from them.
I love that you said that. And, one of the things I try and impress upon leaders is that you're never done learning, and nobody knows everything. And if you know everything about a specific job, you're deeply overqualified. But I even think like the people that are the best, they're the best because they're open and they continue to learn, and they lift people up around them to really kind of pull out the best ideas from the people in their midst. I think that's really important. So I love that you said that, and I love that you acknowledge that you don't have decades of experience, but you have a ton of experience, and your perspective is so different than someone who's been doing this for 30 years or 25 years. I think that's just really, really refreshing. So because you're the age you are, what are people getting wrong about your generation? And I know you can't speak for the whole generation, but I think there's fairly uneducated dialogue about, oh, well, millennials or Gen Z are just unmotivated and they're lazy and they don't want to do anything. And I just think that's a really big disservice to a huge population of people that are very driven. So I'd love your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, you look at millennials. Millennials are responsible for the foundings of, Facebook, Google, lots of extremely large companies. I think, yeah, I mean, I think it's always going to be a thing. Kind of previous generation
Yeah.
thinking that the following generations are lazy. I mean, even
Mm.
the baby boomers, were kind of in some ways some synonymous with hippies, and previous generations thought that they were just lazy and didn't take
Yeah.
things seriously. So I think
So
it's going
true.
to be a pattern. I'm sure one day I'll be ranting about the
Yeah.
coming generations. I already am a little bit, but I think that's a trend that's going to continue. But I think where people need to adapt is it's in treating people more like humans and just
Yeah.
kind of more fairly. I think that's where there's kind of a disconnect between maybe where older generations like to be very kind of hierarchical. Everyone's
Right.
wearing a suit. You call me sir, and this kind of stuff. And young people don't really. I
Respond well
think,
to that. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It's like don't pretend you're better than me, kind of thing.
And so if we
Yeah.
flip that, you working with older people that have been doing this for 25, 30 years, what's your message to them of, connecting? And I think there's, like we just said, there's an obvious us and them kind of mentality. So, I think just as the younger generation is getting judged, the older generation is being put out to pasture because people are saying you're too old, you can't respond fast enough, you can't do the things that we need anymore. We need fresh perspective. So what's your view on that? Because you obviously are working with people of all different ages.
I think the important thing is to just understand that the world is always adapting, and
Yeah.
to be aware of that change and to embrace it. Because in a lot of cases, you can't change everything in the world that you don't like. And I think it just digging your heels into the sand. And if lots of people like working a certain way, and just because over your 40 years in business or something didn't do things that way, but this is now the way things are done.
Yeah.
I think it's important to just learn to adapt. It's a very, very key thing. So yeah, that's what I would say to anyone. Is always keep adapting, keep learning. And
Cool.
yeah.
So I would be crazy to not hit on this topic, because you have a degree in AI and robotics, but dare we talk about ChatGPT and the role of AI, because it is everywhere and the news is hyping it like crazy. So I know you have some thoughts on this. I'd love you to share.
Sure. Yeah. So ChatGPT, I think, in a lot of ways there are reasons to be concerned, but then equally in a lot of ways, I think it's like ChatGPT in particular is completely overblown. I think a reason, like things to be concerned about, definitely are the automation of jobs, and I'm not so much talking about ChatGPT now. I'm talking about things like self checkouts in supermarkets.
Yeah.
That's not using AI,
No.
but still, it's a relatively simple machine that can replace dozens of jobs in stores. And the problem, or like dozens of jobs in a single store. And the problem with things like that is the kind of pool of jobs that most humans can do more efficiently or better or cheaper than a machine is shrinking. And yes, other jobs are being created. That's a common like kind of counterpoint.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, jobs have a high education standard. So, for example, who's developing the AI? Like, okay, yeah, but that's not some. You if a self checkout takes your job as a cashier and you don't have that sort of education level, saying, "Oh, why don't they just become an AI engineer?" And it's not just not realistic.
Yeah.
So I think there are reasons to be concerned. I don't think enough is being done. I think there needs to be a lot more thought and regulation about it now, because it is something that's going to happen. It's a trend that's already starting very much. I mean, with ChatGPT specifically, I think that is overhyped. I think I would describe it predominantly as a toy that can be a useful tool if you are already an expert with any given field. And what I mean by that is sort of AI chatbots are prone to hallucination, which is essentially where they'll just start making things up. So a good example of this is where ChatGPT was used in a medical, kind of a specialist medical doctor's exam, where it was given a list of symptoms and it had to diagnose a patient based on that. And there were three questions. The first question, where it got the list of symptoms, it diagnosed the patient correctly. In the second one, it diagnosed the patient incorrectly. And then in the third question, it made up a condition like that fit that list of symptoms and then said that the patient had this. And the reason why I say, you kind of need to be an expert in your field for ChatGPT to be a useful tool is because you need to be a specialist doctor in order to spot that so you can quality control. So,
wow. Yikes. I mean, that's a great example, because I know a lot of people are playing with it right now. They're using it to write content. They're using it for articles. They're, really kind of enjoying it. And I think people are taking it pretty seriously. They're believing everything that comes out of the tool. So that is very eye-opening. Thank you for sharing that. That's alarming.
Absolutely. There was also recently, very recently, I think just in the past few weeks, a case in the US where lawyers used ChatGPT to kind of prepare their defense. Or no, I think it was the prosecution. But regardless, it took the output that it generated and submitted that to the judge. And it had completely fabricated a bunch of legal cases and outcomes of legal cases to strengthen its argument. But again, it's predictive text. It's not a thinking sentient thing. Right. It puts words in an order that probably makes sense and read well, but it doesn't, fact check or anything.
Well, it's interesting. I spent 23 years at IBM. And so I was around during the whole Jeopardy craze and Watson. And, we were working very closely with the Mayo Clinic and some other really big medical journals. And every time they would do diagnostic, they would give a probability. And they would say, this is a 86% likely diagnosis of this. But it deferred to the expert, and it was not to replace a doctor, it was to assist. And I think it's a great reminder that that's how you should use it. And maybe everybody could calm down a little bit about, because it's not taking everybody out at the knees. It is a tool, and it is used to assist, not to drive.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so what inspires you?
I want to realize my own potential. I want to do useful things. I want to do something that helps a lot of people on a large scale. And I want to enjoy doing it, and those are all three things that I feel that I have with what I'm doing at the moment.
But what makes your heart go pitter patter? Like, what do you love to work on? What makes you smile? What makes you tick?
Well, it really comes down to solving complicated problems and then really seeing a positive impact in people's lives as a result of that. And my big goal with Revolancer is to permanently change the freelancing industry for the better. Nice. And while that's still some way away, we're certainly making progress, and that's a really rewarding experience.
That's great. And what would you like your legacy to be?
I don't know. I would like to have done, useful things that help people, and yeah, I'd be pretty happy with that, to be honest.
Well, it has been a pleasure, Karl. Thank you so much for being on and sharing all of your wisdom at the ripe old age of 23. I wish I had your wisdom at 23. I'd be in a much different place now, but I am extremely impressed, and I hope the audience really enjoyed all of this. How do people find you?
Well, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. And if you want to find me, if you look me up on LinkedIn, that's probably the best way to contact me. And if you're interested in Revolancer, then Google that or go to revolancer.com and you'll be able to find it.
Great. And we'll share all of that with the audience. Thank you so much for being our guest. And everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. More to come soon. Take care. Thanks for listening to Heartbeat for Hire. If you like what you hear, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave a 5-star review. To keep the conversation going, you can find me on Insta or at LinkedIn at Lyndsay Dowd, H4H, or you can reach me at my website, heartbeatforhire.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.